Hello, thank you for tuning in. I have a wonderful story to share. A story of really at the heart of it is how just another way Jeff and Shaleia's work in Twin Flame Ascension School and Life Purpose class has completely changed my life. And this is going to be particularly in the area of my wealth and financial success. So, really quick, I'm gonna try to. There's so many miracles to share in this story, but I want to also make the story flow. When I met Deanna, we came together. Um, when we just realized Deanna and I that we were twin flames. I was making about 17K a year. um, and then of course, Deanna and I went through just a lot at the beginning of our relationship where we gained everything and then we literally lost everything to the point where we had to give plasma in order to buy groceries. We had a big rise and fall at the beginning, and from there it was a slow building of our finances. And I didn't know like what I was supposed to do, because I know my life purpose is to be a spiritual teacher. At that time that was not what was available. So it was literally a path of me building my life from the ground. Excuse me. Started with what God offered me: cook at Applebee's, um, server at Applebee's, server in these other positions. Then we became a CNA. Oh my gosh, really, I was just burning off karma. I'll say that. It's what I felt spiritually, in these kind of levels of service. But at one point, this is where I want to really explain how God led me on this amazing journey of true financial um, breakthrough. Dan and I kept burning through these different jobs. We realized we needed to go on our own unique financial path with God. Um, and so we had only one vehicle at the time, and she took the one vehicle to pursue her path of teaching. And I literally bought a bike because we'd run out of all of our funds again. We had this cycle, and the only job available was waiting tables. And I was like, that's literally what I was doing when I first met her. And there's this like crisis moment where I was like, oh my gosh, how am I still biking? And now I'm not in a warm climate anymore. I'm in Wisconsin biking to a serving job. This is hell. And I prayed so hard to God, you have got to come through with a miracle because this is not going to work. And literally, God pointed me to a timeshare company. I won't say any names, but I felt my heart light up. Sales. We'd done jobs in education, CNA, serving. I did one serving or sales job at Menards to get my feet wet a little bit. But I guess I'll just say it, blue green vacation. There it is. Um, timeshare. And I saw that they had terrible ratings online, to be quite honest. Um, but I felt compelled, absolutely compelled. I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really even believe in timeshare, but I can tell God is calling me to this. And the only way I'm going to get there is by car. We're going to have to take a huge risk. And I literally, in the middle of the night, because it was so urgent, I told Deanna, I have got to go. There's an interview tomorrow. I have to go. And I'm going to borrow your car since you don't need it tomorrow. And if I get this job, we're going to buy me a car. And luckily, Deanna stood by me. I got the job. And I knew I was like, because I couldn't, the other road was death. I'd already way outdone that path. And it was just literally, I did one day at this restaurant with my bicycle. And everything felt wrong, and that's how you know you're not on the right path. It's like I'm not supposed to be touching plates and food, and none of this is right. And I got the job, and I got my first car that I actually bought for myself. I was like 39 years old, 38, 39, and I never bought a car for myself. But God told me to invest in a nice car, my Ford Fusion, which I still have, and I love it. And this was my big chance, and I dove all in. And it was just like miracle energy to start off with. And I loved the sales training, and I loved talking about vacations and being in the energy of wealth. And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels great. And without going into much detail, I had a huge culture clash with the place where I realized this ain't gonna work. It only lasted literally. I made some great sales already right from the get go, and I hit this wall where I was like, culturally, this isn't gonna work. And so after a month and a half, just cold turkey quit, even though I was doing quite successful. And I was like, oh my gosh, here I've had my palate wet with, what I loved about sales was I had that taste of having infinite wealth possibilities, not just a set income, but I made some great sales and I got to see these big checks come in. I was like, oh, that feels divine. The ability to infinitely manifest wealth. And so I was like digging it. Well, I got a job with a little restaurant managing for a little while because we needed money, but then I still knew I got to get back into sales. Deanna worked at a phone company, and I joined her in that. And enormous challenges came up. Like you wouldn't believe. Like I was literally crying in the safe, being like, because no training, no anything was happening. Um, but we had this cycle where our resume wasn't good because we kept jumping jobs, and so I had to take this opportunity. And once again, I prayed, God, there's no one training me. You're going to have to teach me. And luckily, He did. And I started to see my sales increase because I had faith. And I worked through the huge challenge of not knowing what the heck I was doing. Um, and then I ran into another huge roadblock. Deanna and I went through a period of separation, which is a whole other story. So I only found myself with half of the income I had before. And I knew we were still meant to be together. But I just told God, okay, I'm doing your will, God. And I need lots of money right now because I'm living off of one income. And so God just sent me amazing sales. And then Dan and I came back together, and I was able to support the both of us for quite a while. And then I switched over to furniture sales, and I went from like 40K um, in phone to 80K in uh, furniture, and just kept having faith in God. Basically, I just knew when God would tell me, it's time to look at Indeed, it's time to look for jobs. It's all about trusting God and following His flow. And He always had it was like a blinker that would go off on the right job. But once again, I found at the furniture place that I was outgrowing it very fast, which of course, you're going to do. And so I prayed again. I was like, okay, God, I can tell like I'm not really vibing anymore with this place, even though I'm succeeding wildly, selling amazingly. My energy is bursting out again. And so I was praying for something bigger to sell. And God pointed me, started getting me meditating on roofing sales, which, oh my gosh, I was like door to door, really. But I felt compelled and I couldn't, stop myself. And sure enough, I woke up in the middle of the night one night, and I had that feeling of like something has to change. And scrolled on Indeed. It was once again, I felt the blinking lights on Total Exteriors, where I currently work, a roofing company, because I knew that roofing companies could be a shady thing, and I'd given up. Like I wasn't going to work for anything remotely shady. And they had amazing reviews. I'd been watching this guy Adam Bensman talk about how to be a good roofer on YouTube, and they were aligned with his vision. So I dove in, and this is where more and more miracles I want to share, because this is the hard industry to break through. Um, Literally, it's kind of like the Hunger Games. Most people get eaten and spit out really fast because, door to door. There were some leads and stuff, but long story short, I was like, okay, I feel compelled. I literally had a dream about helping a neighbor with a hailstorm roof, and I was excited to like experience this industry. And long story short, a big old hailstorm hit right off the get go. and it was not quite, it was like a 30-minute drive away. And I just hit it hard. I was like, okay, now's my chance to prove myself. And I actually, hit a huge wall. I was getting inspections, I was knocking away, but it was these small towns where people were being loyal only to their very local companies. So I was putting in all this work and I was not seeing the return. I was like, oh no, I've staked my whole life. I had this, lucrative furniture job, and I just staked my whole life on this. How the heck? Well, really, it was really, this has to work. God never fails me. And I was tempted to give up. I actually called the furniture place. I'm not gonna lie. I'm telling all the truth here because I thought after this hailstorm hit and I wasn't getting any success, I was like, oh, and I was almost like passing out from the heat. Like I felt like I couldn't handle being out in the heat. I was like, this is just too much. I can't handle all the driving. Called the furniture place and they wouldn't take me back. And I felt it wasn't because obviously I was stupidly successful at the job. It was because we both knew I wasn't a culture fit. And it was also God's discipline saying, don't give up, my son, don't give up. And so I said, God always comes through. He always wins. And so I chose to stick it out. Even though I knew that like I had to hit it big in order for us to survive. Deanna and I live a fairly, we've risen our standards to a certain level. And then the Madison storm hit. And this is how you just know it's God. God knew a storm was going to hit Madison this year. Because what I'm sharing this story is really to toot God's horn. This is all God. This is just me answering his call. Big Madison storm hit, and long story short, I started hitting the ground running because I love this city. That's where I live. And I felt a deep soulfulness in serving like my very local community. And long story short, started trickle as a trickle like of success, and then it just blew up. I was making about 100K a month in sales, and then suddenly it turned into almost 400K, which is quite a bit in roofing. And I realized, oh my gosh, I've made it. um, and not only that, I was attracting literally the nicest customers in the world, having a blast, getting all these leads for people that were just ready to go. Miracles, straight up miracles. This my boss literally said this is the most successful anyone has ever been as a first year. He's been doing this since 2012. And all I had, really, I mean, of course, I'm tenacious, I'm persistent, I don't give up. But it was really the fact that God kept delivering miracles. And what I want to share, like about being in touch with God, He would literally, it's about developing a relationship with God. And so I make sure as part of my relationship as I watch, classes, Twin Flame Ascension School regularly, it keeps me tuned to God. And when I am tuned to God, I can literally hear him when he says, knock on that door, talk to that person, be in this neighborhood at this time. There is so much in this industry that just relies on your gut. And God would literally, like, I wouldn't waste a lot of time. I'm telling you the truth. Like, of course, there were days where I would not, maybe to not as much success, but most of the time I would just be tuned in, knock in this neighborhood. And I would just hit it off with these people. It would be this huge claim by my standards. And I just kept finding this. Even towards the end of the season, I was like starting to get a little casual about things, knocking around and stuff. But the one lady that ended up being the big deal in this neighborhood this one day was literally someone who came up to me. And usually the salespeople, not necessarily the people that want to jump onto immediately, but she's like, hey, are you a roofer? I don't think anyone's checked out my roof yet. Lovely person. Had a great sale, full siding and roof for her. And that's what happened all season. And this is the law of attraction at work. It wasn't just that I was making good sales. I was meeting amazing, like lovely people, like people that I would be friends with, like just straight up, or like be connected to in some way because they were just beautiful people. And I was like, this is God's hand. So I just to finish the story, I was nominated Rookie of the Year, and that's what inspired me to share this little smudge. But I did get Rookie of the Year for Total Exteriors, which I'm very proud of. It's just a sign of God's miracle. I met my goal. I surpassed $1 million in sales. Um, and more than that, I really found a company like the owner, Jason, shout out to you, is heart of gold, and the people I work with, really beautiful people. That was all God. He made sure to give the neon sign in my heart when I saw Total Exteriors post. And this is what it means to be tuned with God. He'll make life easy for you. He will open doors, and you just have to have courage. When you start developing that relationship with God, when He's calling you someplace, and you just have to say yes. And you just have to trust. There's no way I could have known a big old hailstorm was going to hit in Madison, and I was going to meet all these beautiful, wonderful people and have such a fun time selling roofing and siding and gutters. But I did, thanks to God. And I'm anticipating this will be my very first year making six figures, and that is a blessing. But really, it's about seeing how God loves me, seeing how God guides me. And I had this huge journey to discover my passion for sales and my passion for unlimited opportunities for wealth and growth. But it was God who led me here. It was God who led me on this path to discovering this. Just by, as Jeff and Shaleia say, follow the golden thread. Just keep following where you're led. You might not know where you're going, but trust that if your heart is guiding you, it'll guide you well. And all of this will serve me well as a spiritual teacher, as I'm my ultimate, because that is a worldwide platform. That is, I desire to share this work with the world. And all of this, everything that God puts you through, sets you up for the big picture, what God has you for, as you develop yourself. So I just hope this encourages you. Like, God is a miracle God. And I was actually just watching class now. All you have to do, this is what Shaleia was saying, is attune yourself to the divine. Because all of this, like, miracles come from God, and miracles are for you. You just have to attune, which is, for me, it's, well, for everyone, like, God is love. You attune yourself to love. You attune yourself to joy, to peace. I do this through, my own spiritual practices, which is very centered around, Twin Flame Ascension School classes. There are so many ways to do it. That's definitely by far the most potent one for me. Um, Also, just, eating well, exercising, all those things, like having a balance in your life. But um, ultimately, I do want to say this success is thanks to Jeff and Shaleia and the Twin Flame Ascension School or Twin Flame Universe community, because just having my twin flame in my life gives me like endless amounts of joy and energy to serve and give. That's really like the key thing that inspired me to go from 17K to my six figures now, and of course much more in the future. With your twin flame, there's unlimited joy because you're eternally created for each other. um, Unlimited joy, unlimited potential and power to tap into. So encourage you to check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Sending you so much love, and I'll see you next time.